Yes, good morning. Thank you very much for your presentations. I'm Chris Beddoes from the European Petroleum Industry Association, so representing the oil refiners and marketers of Europe. And I guess my question is to, having listened to the debate, is to all the panel, particularly to Maria van der Hoeven perhaps. But Commissioner Oettinger emphasized that a lot of the low-hanging fruit has been plucked already. And Maria van der Hoeven mentioned that Europe has, well, certainly Netherlands, has a very strong competitive refining and integrated chemical industry, petrochemical industry. Now, refining is part of the industrial infrastructure. We face 60% of our costs are energy, twice those of the US. And so I guess my question, our consumers want refined products. They don't want oil. Oil may be priced the same throughout the world, more or less, but our consumers, including petrochemicals, need oil. So the question really is, how do we keep the production of oil and other manufactured products in Europe? And how do we make competitiveness mainstreamed in policy as successfully as climate has been over the past 4 or 5 years? And does this package, does this proposal do that? Does it mainstream competitiveness?
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Any others before I come back to the panel? Yes, sorry, I didn't see you there. Could somebody, it's not so easy for me to reach into you, so if you could reach across the divide. Thank you very much.
Thank you. My name is Carmen Pan. I'm a journalist. And I had a question for Mr. Henryer. You keep on talking about tailor-made, and this is something that I hear a lot from all the different industries that I cover. So I wanted to ask you if you can just kind of give an example of what do you exactly mean by that? What could be done? I mean, just give a suggestion to the European Commission, for example, of what could really be done. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that. Any more before I come back? Yes, I see one there. Hang on a second, sir. Please. It's all right, you talk, we'll pick you up. There we are.
Yeah, Konrad Szymański, member of the European Parliament. I would like to ask you about one hypothetical question. We are close to finalize the transatlantic free trade agreement. We know a lot about the shape of this agreement. Do you imagine that we can sign this agreement today?
Sorry, in the context of the energy debate?
Of course, in the context of this, all these unproportional factors mentioned many times during this discussion about the energy price, about the gas price, etc.
Okay, so you see a link between those two things. Anybody, we're also going to come back on, of course, on those trade agreements this afternoon specifically. Any more before I come back to our panel? Okay, and as we are running out of time a little bit, could I just add to that this question about the internal energy market? Because when you read all the Commission papers last week on energy costs and its proposals for the climate and energy package, it talks there about if you completed the internal market, it could deliver 40 to 70 billion of cost savings by 2030. So how important do you think that is? Because the Commission's saying, look, our strategy isn't just about targets. It's also about infrastructure, which was mentioned earlier a lot by the Commissioner, and it's also about completing the internal energy market. How important a factor do you think those things will be? But Theo, perhaps I could come to you first, because there was a very specific question to you about tailor-making, as it were.
Yes. Well, first of all, the emission trading system, I think there are fundamental flaws in this. There was in the beginning, when it started, that the best performers would have a free allocation of carbon credits. That's not true. The European steel industry, for example, compared with the world steel industry, is much more energy efficient, but also in terms of the CO2 emissions, they are doing better. Best performers are have a shortage because the benchmarks are made on paper and not on real benchmarks. So I think we should do it with real benchmark. We don't need more CO2 allowances if we produce less, so there should be a dynamic allocation process based on real production, and also if you internationally can provide, and we have those things, that you are the best performer, so the 10 best performers or 10% of the best performers, that they have a fee allocation. Because if we don't do it, we kill manufacturing here for very important supply chains. It will be produced elsewhere, in Brazil or in China, and we import CO2, and we export jobs. So my feeling is we should make it more sector specific. What is for power stations, they have a choice. If you make steel, you need coal, iron ore, and you get emissions of CO2, but you can use your process in a more efficient way that you produce less CO2. You can handle that a bit.
Okay.
For power plants, they have a choice. They can produce with coal, they can do it from biomass, they can use wind, or they can use gas. And that choice is not there. So we should look much more specific per sector what is possible. Also, that's happening now in the aviation industry. On a worldwide basis, they come as well to targets which are realistic and which don't erode the position of good airlines here, and that's the same here for industry.
Okay, thank you very much, Theo. On this broader question, and I'd like to link the two things, somebody asking there, how do we mainstream energy competitiveness in the same way that the Commission has repeatedly emphasized the need to mainstream climate issues? And linked to that, please, this question of the internal energy market. How do we get there? This has been a long and uphill struggle. And do you agree with the Commission that this could play a huge role in terms of making energy prices in Europe more competitive? Or do you think that is a bit of a diversion from the real game, as it were? Fulvio, please, a thought from you.
Several questions have been raised that refers to the single market, but let me point to one in particular. The need of having more infrastructure, more connections among markets. To have a single market, you don't need only just the wishes of the politicians. You need to have physical connections. There are distortions in these days that are horrible. In Bavaria, they have a shortfall of energy, and they have plenty of energy coming from the north, and there is no interconnection. But guess what? They speak about single market, and the dispatching authorities don't speak to each other. It's like here. I mean, we have difficulties in hearing each other because of the different sound. It's the same in the story of the transmission systems. They don't speak to each other. So we could export our excess capacity that we have in northern Italy, in Bavaria, cheaper, and we can't do it because the two authorities don't speak to each other. So it's a wish that it has to be fulfilled by having more freedom of speak between authorities, more interconnectivities, and a single approach to supply raw materials.
Okay.
Let me put it this way, and this is answering to the questions about North American European Treaty. We don't need to run the mistake of following a false myth once more. The false myth of shale gas. This is a false myth.
False myth.
We have not enough shale gas in Europe that will justify a shale gas revolution here. Whenever you go to Poland and you see oil major going there and trying to find gas, they go back. I say there is not enough.
Some of them, they stay.
Okay, good enough. But this will not be enough to make that kind of revolution the Americans have. For different reasons. I don't want to annoy anybody here with the technical reason why this cannot be made. Secondly, if we also think about treating the shale gas from America to come over here to come to our rescue, it's a false myth. Today, the Americans are paying $4 a million BTU. Here in Europe, we pay $10 a million BTU. The Japanese are paying $17 a million BTUs. The Japanese are still making quite a lot of progress in their industrialization. They are back to the 80s. Now we stand in the high cost because there are other factors that we keep forgetting about. Cost of labor, cost of finance, innovation, and we speak just about the energy, which is one small component of everything.
Okay.
Final point, even if you assume that you could import that capacity coming from the United States, once it's delivered here in Europe, it will be costing $10 like you would be expecting.
Okay, Fulvio, I'm going to ask you to be brief because I want everyone else to be able to comment, and we're running out of time, yeah.
Political drive decision. We are too dispersed in securing raw materials. The Commission has alluded to. Azerbaijan is a supply agreement. The most important supplier to us is Russia. And we fight Russia as a foe, as opposed to treat Russia as a partner. If we would be able to come together, all Europeans, go to Russia and say, let's have a huge main contract for gas, this will give us the equivalent of the shale gas that we're coming from the America.
Thank you.
So we need to take that decision.
A whole nother discussion to have. But please, Henrika and Margaret.
On the shale gas, because definitely this is not a miracle solution. And it seems to me that this exaggeration about becoming another Emirates or whatever, right? This is definitely won't working. But there are resources, and I mean this is the goal for the government, and that's good that the European Union finally gave up on giving us instructions what kind of regulation we have to have in Poland. And there are resources definitely. So for our policy, for energy mix, it's extremely important. It won't be 50%, and definitely it won't solve our problems with the supply of energy, but that can change our situation definitely. And today, when we are in 55% dependent on the coal, that makes a difference. So that's why I mean that every country has to look for pragmatic solutions, right? Not something that would eventually be, a lottery, but I mean something that would change, the energy policy.
Okay.